Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is an action comedy film based on the role-playing game of the same name, directed by John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein, and revolves around a band of misfits played by Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Regé-Jean Page, Justice Smith, Sophia Ellis, and Hugh Grant, as they all try to fight against a group of evil red wizards and also find a lost relic that they lost on a previous adventure. So they not only have to do all of that, but they also have to combine their abilities and get past their differences to, stop the bad guys and save the world. I am a pretty big D&D fan. I got into the game a couple of years ago and have really enjoyed it since. So I guess I'm part of the target demographic of D&D players and just overall nerds who would enjoy something like this. But I made sure to try to look at it as a movie and not just a D&D movie, as one might mistakenly do. And I would say that this is a very serviceable movie. It's got plenty of good, action moments, some decent comedy, and even some little bits of heartwarming, emotional drama that can kind of suck you into the characters, whether you're a D&D player or not. Though D&D is not, entirely about, a pre-made story. It's also about the stories that you make with your characters and your fellow players' characters. So there's always going to be a bit of a challenge when making a movie adaptation for a game like Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, I feel like this works, and it does it way better than any attempt at adapting this role-playing game, such as the 2000 movie starring Jeremy Irons, or any of the following direct-to-DVD movies that were even worse than the former was. But again, this is good, and I think this, in most ways, clears the name of bad D&D movies and just allows D&D to be back into the mainstream in a positive light. And I think that's what this movie will do. It'll inspire, more people to take up the game, or at least be somewhat interested in it. And yeah, I think that's it. Other than, the sort of influential aspect of it, I think the acting is serviceable. Everyone seems to be giving about 100%. Chris Pine does a decent job as the, lovable bard who gets into trouble but, means well. And everyone else does a good job, like Michelle Rodriguez as the tough barbarian, which is almost like a D&D version of her character from Fast and Furious. Justice Smith is a good I think warlock or wizard who doubts himself often and his abilities. Sophia Ellis as a druid who's not too keen on humans and is able to transform into different creatures to kind of help the party. And then Regé-Jean Page, who plays a brief role, I'll admit brief role, as Zinx, who is a paladin who kind of helps the party out a bit. And then Hugh Grant as the kind of dickish role of Forge, the wizard, because you always gotta have a wizard who's kind of a jerk to the rest of the party. But yeah, everyone did a good job. I felt they were believable as their respective characters, and nothing felt too out of place. As I've said before in some of my other videos, I'm not always, good at telling whether or not the writing or direction is entirely good or bad, but I felt the direction was pretty serviceable as well. Same with the writing, which is good to know, but also surprising now figuring out that the film had 2 directors and 3 main writers, which is not always a good thing for a movie, but I'm glad that they were able to pull it off with this movie. In terms of seeing this in the theater, I don't often mention whether or not this is good enough for the theater, but I would say this is a very fun time in the theater if you're at all interested in the IP, even if you're not playing the game or have played any tabletop games for that matter. But if you're in any small way interested or into fantasy and ensemble action comedies, then I'd say Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves is the right choice. I'm gonna give Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves a 9 out of 10. The best I can give it. A very fun time. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope you maybe check out some of my other videos, especially some of my movie and TV reviews, if you're here for that sort of stuff. And other than that, I hope you guys have a good day. Take care of yourselves, and maybe check out Dungeons and Dragons.